Do you really believe that everything that happens in your life is merely the result of chance, human effort, or so-called luck? This is precisely where one of the greatest illusions many people carry without realizing it lies. If victory depended solely on the strength of our arms, how many would already be exhausted without hope? And the question that lingers is, could you be ignoring an invisible yet absolutely real force capable of changing the course of your story in the blink of an eye? Imagine if, instead of carrying the burdens of life alone, you had someone greater by your side, someone willing to intervene in the most impossible situations. Have you ever stopped to think about how many moments you survived or were spared without even understanding how? This reflection may be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. What you might call a coincidence could, in fact, be a sign that there is something, or rather someone, acting in your favor. By understanding how the gracious hand of God moves, you'll stop seeing problems as insurmountable barriers and begin to view them as stages for miracles. Faith will become your fuel. Your identity as the chosen one will be reaffirmed, and you won't just see external changes. You'll experience a new way of living, with confidence, boldness, and peace that surpasses all human logic. There are moments when everything seems to conspire against us, as if the universe decided to make the journey harder. Yet it's exactly in this scenario that something beyond logic comes into play: the gracious hand of God. It's the invisible breath that pushes open closed doors, the strength that lifts you when the ground has already given way. This isn't just about religion, it's about experiencing a reality that transcends the natural. What was once a limitation becomes a possibility, and what seemed like defeat turns into a stepping stone to victory. When someone chooses to surrender their heart to Christ, they don't just receive forgiveness, but also this supernatural favor. It's as if a new atmosphere envelops them: courage to face giants, wisdom that doesn't come from books, resources that appear from nowhere. It's impossible to live this and still believe everything depends solely on your own effort. The chosen one begins to live with the certainty that they don't walk alone, and that changes everything. Perhaps you've already felt this without realizing it. Remember that time when an unexpected yes opened a path of opportunities, or that problem that seemed unsolvable and suddenly an unlikely solution appeared. That's where grace shows its face. This divine hand doesn't erase human responsibilities, but expands your vision, multiplies results, and makes each step resonate far beyond what you could imagine. The secret lies in recognizing that this force isn't a product of luck or coincidence, but of faith. Those who believe don't live intimidated by the size of the obstacle, because they know the Creator doesn't abandon His children to chance. This understanding brings stability, fills you with peace, and gives you boldness to dream bigger. After all, what was once seen as unattainable now becomes possible under God's gaze. In times of crisis, many give up before even trying, but those who know this gracious hand refuse to stop. They understand that grace doesn't eliminate the desert, but provides shade, fresh water, and direction amidst the scorching heat. It's a kind of invisible shield that protects while teaching, strengthens while guiding. Life ceases to be mere survival and becomes a journey of growth and purpose. In this setting of subtle miracles and profound transformations, we begin to notice real stories unfolding around us, where diagnoses change, doors open, and hearts are restored. This leads us to reflect on how this grace manifests practically and tangibly in the lives of those who believe, showing that we're not talking about theory but lived experiences. A medical diagnosis that seemed like a final sentence, a family marked by generations of failure, a stagnant career due to a lack of opportunities. These are common scenarios that could end in frustration but become stages for extraordinary testimonies when the gracious hand of God steps in. What seemed like a period becomes merely a comma for a new beginning, and those watching from the outside are amazed. How was this possible? In practice, stories of people healed against all medical predictions multiply. When science says there's nothing more to be done, faith declares that the final word belongs to the Creator. It's in this space that the impossible happens. Likewise, broken families find restoration, homes filled with shouts begin to echo with laughter, and cycles of destruction give way to new generations filled with hope. This is transformation by grace, not coincidence. In the professional world, divine favor also manifests in surprising ways. Who hasn't heard of someone who, after years of closed doors, was remembered at just the right moment? It's not magic or manipulation, it's the invisible favor that connects people, creates opportunities, and accelerates processes. It's as if heaven gives a little push and says, "Now it's your turn," and life changes course in an instant. It's interesting to note that these testimonies aren't limited to biblical figures or famous leaders. They happen in the daily lives of ordinary people who trust and choose to stand firm, even when everything seems to be falling apart. The power lies in not giving up, even when circumstances scream against you. Because the chosen one knows they're not alone, and grace has the power to reverse even what seemed lost. Looking back, many realized that the battles that nearly destroyed them were precisely the ones that revealed how much God was working. The pain that seemed unbearable became a platform for inspiration. The unemployment that brought tears made way for a greater calling. It's incredible how He can use even the broken pieces to form a new vessel, stronger, more beautiful, more full of purpose. These stories aren't just beautiful memories to be told, but living signs that grace is still in motion. And by recognizing this, the heart fills with gratitude and boldness. Because if He did it before, He can do it again. And if He did it in others' lives, He can do it in yours. This naturally leads us to reflect on how to live consciously in this reality, without fear, but with renewed confidence. Life gains a new perspective when someone understands they don't walk alone. Grace isn't a distant theological concept, but an active force that manifests daily. Living aware of this means walking with the certainty that each step is accompanied by God, and this awareness brings unshakable confidence. Those who know this don't shrink before challenges, but face struggles as opportunities to witness miracles. With this vision, even prayers change tone. Instead of timid, fear-filled requests, bold words loaded with faith emerge. The believer who understands divine favor declares victory even when the situation looks discouraging. They learn to speak like David, who said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" This kind of conviction sustains through storms. And it doesn't stop there. This mindset also shapes how you wait. Those who live aware of grace don't wait for the future with pessimism, but with expectation. They know tomorrow could bring an open door, an unexpected answer, or help that arrives at the last moment. This hope isn't naivety, but faith in action, recognizing that God moves in unlikely moments. It's like always being ready for the extraordinary. In the workplace, for example, this posture changes everything. While many lose heart in the face of competition or difficulties, those who carry this awareness remain steadfast. They know it's not just about their resume, but about the favor that comes from above. This conviction translates into perseverance, excellence, and even surprising opportunities. Those watching from the outside notice there's something different there. Psalm 41 reminds us that enemies don't triumph over those who have God's favor. This doesn't mean the absence of problems, but a guarantee of protection and deliverance. It's as if an invisible barrier prevents injustice from having the final word. This certainty brings peace in chaos and strengthens even when everything seems lost. There's no room for fear when you live under the Creator's gracious hand, and it's precisely this awareness that prepares the heart to understand historical and inspiring examples of people who lived this reality. Men and women who, even amidst the harshest adversities, were sustained and lifted because they chose to believe that grace was greater than any injustice. One of the greatest symbols of this truth is the story of Joseph, whose journey reveals how divine favor transforms destinies. Joseph didn't have an easy life, and that's exactly what makes his story so powerful. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold as a slave, and later unjustly imprisoned, he seemed destined for failure. But instead of being destroyed by circumstances, Joseph stood out for his integrity and excellence in everything he did. It was as if God's gracious hand lifted him up, even when the world tried to pull him down. In every setting, whether in Potiphar's house or in prison, Joseph became a reference. Not because he had all the resources or privileges, but because he carried something greater, divine favor. This distinction opened improbable doors until the day he stood before Pharaoh. In a matter of hours, the slave became a governor, proving that no one can limit what God has decided to accomplish. What's most striking about his journey is that Joseph never lost his essence. Even when everything seemed unfair, he kept a clean heart, refusing to give in to hatred or resentment. This posture shows that grace not only opens paths, but also shapes character. The chosen one learns it's not just about reaching the top, but arriving there with a spirit ready to serve. Joseph's story is a practical reminder that adversities don't define destiny. How many times do we feel trapped in a hopeless situation? It could be a stifling job, a betrayal that stings, or an injustice that feels unbearable. Yet the gracious hand keeps working, preparing every detail for the turnaround to happen at the right time. Like Joseph, each of us can live this transformation. In everyday life, this means staying steadfast even when everything seems against you, continuing to give your best even if no one is watching, keeping faith alive even if the promises haven't yet been fulfilled. This kind of attitude catches heaven's attention and moves doors that human effort could never open. Because grace doesn't fail, and God's timing is never late. This same reality, so clear in Joseph's life, is also revealed in many other moments in the history of God's people. Across generations, men and women discovered that divine favor not only sustains through battles, but ensures they don't have the final word. And it's at this point that we understand how grace manifests in our own struggles and victories. Everyone has faced days when there seemed to be no way out. It's in these moments of despair that God's favor becomes most visible. It doesn't mean there won't be pain, but that pain won't have the last word. Battles don't come to destroy us, but to reveal the source of our strength. When someone relies only on their own abilities, they soon run out of resources. But when they trust in the gracious hand, they discover a supply that never runs dry. It's like finding a river of peace in the driest desert. The enemy may try to bring you down, but they can't keep down someone God has already lifted. Grace doesn't just sustain, it places you in positions no one could have imagined. What seemed unattainable becomes reality before everyone's eyes. It's important to understand that battles are part of the journey. Many believe that difficulties signal a lack of faith, but it's quite the opposite. Faith is strengthened in struggles because that's where the supernatural manifests. The chosen one doesn't flee from the battle. They know divine favor accompanies them, ensuring that no weapon formed against them will prosper. This gives courage to press forward. In practice, facing life's battles with this awareness even changes your posture. Instead of complaining, you learn to declare victory, even when the way out isn't yet visible. Instead of giving up, you keep persevering, knowing that grace won't abandon you. This confidence attracts unexpected opportunities, restores relationships, and creates solutions no one could foresee. That's how the gracious hand works, in silence and power. Looking at the history of God's people, we see that He always used battles as a stage to reveal His favor. One of the most inspiring stories in this regard is that of Nehemiah, who, without resources or experience, accepted an impossible challenge. And it was precisely in that impossibility that the gracious hand showed its strength. Nehemiah wasn't an experienced warrior or a renowned architect. He was just a cupbearer, someone who served wine to the king. But when he received the call to rebuild Jerusalem's walls, something extraordinary happened. He recognized that he wasn't alone, that God's gracious hand was upon him. This understanding gave him courage to ask for help, even when it seemed unlikely he'd be heard. With boldness, he approached the king and requested materials, protection, and freedom to carry out the work. And to everyone's surprise, he received everything he needed. This is the power of divine favor, placing resources in the hands of someone who, seemingly, had none. What could have taken years happened with astonishing speed, because God opens doors where there are no latches. The mobilization led by Nehemiah was remarkable. Ordinary people, without military training or construction experience, came together to raise the walls. There was opposition, mockery, and even threats, but nothing could stop the work. When you live aware of grace, attacks don't have enough power to halt your purpose. The secret is keeping your eyes on what God promised, not on the voices trying to discourage you. In just 52 days, the reconstruction was complete. Something that seemed humanly impossible became reality before everyone's eyes. And the most striking part wasn't just the physical work but the spiritual renewal of the people. They understood they weren't a product of chance, but part of a greater story led by the Creator. It was a testimony that crossed generations, showing that nothing is impossible when grace is present. This account inspires us to apply the same principle today. How many times does life place tasks before us that seem beyond our strength? It could be rebuilding a family, restarting a business, or simply rising after a painful fall. If Nehemiah, without resources, could lead such a grand transformation, what's stopping you from being an instrument of change? The secret is believing that God's favor is over your life. Just as with Nehemiah, there are situations where believing isn't enough. You also need to declare. Because faith expressed in words has the power to shape reality. This leads us to reflect on the importance of not just recognizing grace, but proclaiming it with boldness. Sometimes the heaviest battle isn't the external one, but the war waged within the mind. That's why the power of words can't be ignored. When someone gets used to declaring defeat, they attract exactly what they fear. But when they choose to boldly affirm that God's gracious hand is over their life, it completely changes the atmosphere. Words become seeds, and what's planted in faith sprouts in due time. Nehemiah is a great example of this. Even in the face of critics who mocked and tried to halt his mission, he didn't waste energy responding to provocations. Instead, he proclaimed that God's hand was with him. This verbalized conviction not only strengthened him, but also inspired those working alongside him. Speaking of victory when the scenario seems adverse is an act of courage and faith. In everyday life, this applies practically. Instead of saying, "I can't," the believer aware of grace says, "I can do all things through him who strengthens me." Instead of repeating, "Things never change," they declare, "God is opening a new path for me." This verbal posture isn't empty optimism, but applied faith. It's like lighting a lamp in a dark room. It instantly changes the atmosphere. Of course, there will be opposition. There will always be external and internal voices trying to discourage. But choosing to declare grace is like raising an invisible shield. Instead of feeding negativity, the heart is strengthened in divine favor. This generates a strength that doesn't come from favorable circumstances, but from the certainty that there's a God who honors the faith of those who proclaim his presence. Those who learn this principle begin to transform even their routine. Small habits, like giving thanks upon waking or declaring biblical promises aloud, start shaping the family, professional, and spiritual environment. It's in this kind of attitude that victory begins before it even manifests. Because when the mouth speaks, the heart aligns, and reality is impacted by the power of faith. This powerful and transformative practice wasn't exclusive to Nehemiah. Another leader, Ezra, also understood the importance of recognizing and proclaiming God's gracious hand. His story shows how this understanding can sustain someone through great challenges and inspire others to trust in divine favor. Ezra faced a colossal task, leading the restoration of Jerusalem. He had no armies, no great wealth, or grand political influence. What sustained him was something far stronger than any human power, the conviction that God's gracious hand was upon him. This certainty was so real that it guided his decisions, strengthened his heart, and inspired those who walked with him. The secret of his leadership wasn't in sophisticated techniques, but in simple, steadfast faith. At every step, he acknowledged that he wasn't capable alone, but was under divine favor. This made him bold, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. It was as if his confidence was an inexhaustible fuel, capable of moving people and transforming circumstances. Like Nehemiah, Ezra also faced critics and opponents. There will always be those who try to paralyze dreams, question abilities, or sow fear. But he didn't let himself be shaken. Instead of absorbing the poison of doubt, he kept declaring that God's grace was at work. This stance turned obstacles into stepping stones for progress, not barriers to defeat. Ezra's story proves that external resources don't determine the size of the victory, but the willingness to believe and act in faith. Many wait to have everything ready before taking a step. Ezra shows it's the opposite. It's in the step of faith that the path opens. Those who dare to believe discover doors that weren't visible before and find strength they never imagined they had. In the real world, This can be applied in countless ways. Someone who decides to start a business without all the resources at hand, but trusts that God will bring the right connections. Or someone facing a massive family challenge, but believes grace will restore every broken piece. In every detail, living faith becomes a bridge to the supernatural. And it's precisely this conviction, shown by leaders like Ezra, that continues to inspire today. Because it's not about an old story, but an eternal principle. Those who recognize and declare God's gracious hand walk in victories beyond logic. The same favor that sustained Ezra is available now and continues to transform destinies in surprising ways. Life changes radically when someone chooses to see beyond difficulties and focus on divine favor. This mindset is a game changer. Instead of being trapped by problems, you learn to expect good news, believe in turnarounds, and position yourself with confidence. It's a shift in perspective. Out goes the lens of scarcity. In comes the view of abundance that comes from God. When you adopt this posture, even small victories gain new value. The simple act of waking up healthy, finding a creative solution, or receiving unexpected support becomes a sign of grace at work. This creates a cycle of gratitude that in turn attracts even more favor. It's like planting seeds of faith that bloom into new miracles. Those who live this way are no longer easily shaken. What's most interesting is that this mindset not only strengthens faith, but also inspires others. People who live aware of God's favor become living examples of hope. Their confidence is contagious, their joy sparks curiosity, and their faith makes an impact. It's like a flame that doesn't go out but spreads, illuminating environments once steeped in pessimism. In practice, this means changing your internal and external dialogue. Instead of saying, "Nothing works out for me," you declare, "God is opening new doors for my life." Instead of repeating, "I don't have resources," you affirm, "The Lord is my provision." These words shape thoughts, and thoughts shape actions. Gradually, the impossible starts to seem closer because faith has brought it into the realm of possibility. This doesn't mean challenges won't arise. On the contrary, they'll keep coming. The difference is that now they're faced with a different posture, not as insurmountable barriers, but as opportunities to witness God's faithfulness. This mindset gives courage to persist, patience to wait, and boldness to dream even bigger. After all, those who trust know that the Creator has the best in store. This is the final invitation. Abandon the limited perspective and embrace a greater vision rooted in divine favor. Because God didn't call anyone to live imprisoned by problems, but to enjoy the fullness of a destiny prepared with love. Those who choose to live this way experience open doors, right connections, and fulfilled dreams. And they discover day by day that the best is yet to come.